well, why don't you take some revenge on those Atreides? And he's like, okay. And then like literally the next scene is just his corpse.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Nerd Legion. This week, we are discussing Dune Prophecy, the HBO Dune show. We waited for it to be completed because there was only 6 episodes. So, Doa, what were your thoughts on Dune Prophecy?
My thoughts are that my wife is vacuuming right now. And is it coming through the microphone?
No.
Yes. Oh, it's not? Oh, okay. Well, then I'll tell you my thoughts on Dune Prophecy. I thought it was a very middling show. I thought it was if you like Game of Thrones, try this. You know, yet another one of those shows where it's like, oh, political intrigue, oh, violence, oh, sex, you know, oh, an IP you know and like from other places. You know, I think it was profoundly okay. I didn't really hate it, but I definitely didn't love it either. So get ready for an hour of very tepid thoughts. What did you think?
So obviously, I'm a giant Dune fan, and by giant Dune fan, I mean of the first 4 books of Dune that were written by Frank Herbert. I think most people understand that the stuff that was written by his son, and Brian Herbert, is not great. And Kevin J. Anderson, an author which I loathe, is also one. He's a producer on this show, and he was also part of the. He was one of the authors alongside Brian Herbert of the source material, which I have not read, to be fair, of Dune Prophecy that takes place 10,000 years before the normal Dune cycle as we know it, the ones that Denis Villeneuve just made the movies out of. And let me tell you why I hate Kevin J. Anderson.
Why do you hate it?
So I don't know if you know this, but Kevin J. Anderson really got his start, and he's written probably 100+ books at this point in time.
Oh, tons of like spin-off stuff. I know, yeah.
He typically goes into other IPs and then writes books there. Right?
Correct.
Or does collaborations with other authors. And so he's very famous for his Star Wars books, which suck. And he's also been in Dune, obviously, and done a variety of other things.
StarCraft.
So I
know he's written
StarCraft.
Stuff.
Yes, that's true. So I know him because
Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. Throwing that one out there.
I know him because of the Jedi Academy trilogy, which was his first work in Star Wars. And these books are awful, Doa. If you don't know, he introduces this thing called the Sun Crusher, which is a tiny little ship that has torpedoes that can blow up entire solar systems. So basically, it's like we've got to out Death Star the Death Star, and it takes place.
I guess so.
It takes place in the New Republic era, so after the original trilogy. All of this stuff was retconned by the sequel trilogy, obviously, which is good, because this isn't the good stuff that Timothy Zahn wrote, like the Thrawn trilogy. This is actual trash. There's this ship that they find, and it is, by the way, it can survive. It has such powerful armor, it can survive a shot from the Death Star, so it's basically indestructible.
I remember
it has a
this
hyperdrive, so it can go anywhere, and it can destroy entire solar systems. So it's basically the ultimate weapon. And they had to make it so the Emperor didn't know about its existence, so it creates giant plot holes within the Star Wars universe. And these books are really bad. And it totally messed up kind of the post-trilogy Star Wars extended universe. I read them when I was a teenager and thought they were terrible then. I don't think that they've aged particularly well. So I am not a fan, generally speaking, of Kevin J. Anderson's work. And with Dune Prophecy, to get back to Dune Prophecy, and your point about being very mid, which it is not terrible, to be clear. If you like Dune, it is mildly fun to see the world of Dune portrayed in this way and get a sense
Yeah,
of,
sure.
the start of the Bene Gesserit, the start of the Imperial family. We get to see the Landsraad, which is the Council of Nobles. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happens here. But for me, Doa, the central problem with Dune Prophecy is this. It has all of the political intrigue, and I love this. Obviously, like, I love House of the Dragon. I've said that this is my favorite kind of content. But the thing that Dune Prophecy lacks is not the political machinations and the succession drama and everything like that. It's that you don't care about any of the characters. And so there's absolutely zero emotional resonance to anything that happens in Dune Prophecy because everything moves so quickly that you never get a chance to actually feel anything for the characters. So I watch this show and people die, people do horrible
Mhm.
things, and I feel absolutely nothing while watching
Yeah,
any
I
of
was
it.
wondering if I was turning into like a sociopath or something watching this show because I had the same thing, but I just wasn't feeling anything where I was like, and that's a big part of what I talk about when it feels so mid to me, where I had in my notes here too, it's like I just don't care about these characters, you know? And I think part of it is that none of them are really likable. There are like they've managed to make a show with zero likable characters. That's not to say I don't like some of the actors who are in the show and how they portray those characters. I think some of the actors did very well, but like the characters themselves are just not very engaging to me, you know? And so I had that kind of same thing where I just didn't feel anything. Stuff would happen and I'd be like, okay, next, that kind of thing. And I think I was thinking a lot about that. And I think part of it is that, we've got prequels being very popular and all that, but I think we went too far, right? We went way too far back in the universe. And there's this sort of disconnect, I think, where you have something that's 10,000 years in the past, like this is compared to Dune 1 and Dune 2, the movies that just came out, right? The Denis Villeneuve ones. It's 10,000 years before that. And yet it looks a lot like those movies, right? And so I think there's the subconscious kind of disconnect with the story that happens when you look at this and you're told it's this far in the past, but it doesn't really look like it is. Because, sure, maybe technology can kind of stagnate and we know about the Butlerian Jihad and all that and how technology was kind of restarted essentially. And so, sure, maybe it's stagnated for like 10,000 years and all that. But like, you look at like architectural styles, clothing styles, a lot of that kind of stuff. That would definitely not stagnate no matter where the technology was at. So right away, whenever I see a show like this or read something like this where it's set that far in the past or that far in the future, but there really isn't all that different, it's still very Dune, that bothers me, right? Because I'm
Mm.
like, well, this just doesn't feel anything like it should feel. Like we shouldn't, yeah, sure, it's in the Dune universe, quote unquote, but we should not be able to recognize any of this as relating to Dune, aside from there being sand on Arrakis, right? Like everything should be so different looking that we should know we're in essentially an alien place, right? That far in the past. So I think for me, the first miss this show did was in making it look so much like the Denis Villeneuve movies, right? Because it's so far
But
separated time wise.
I
I
think
don't like that personally. Maybe
I
that's just a
understand
me
what you're
thing, but I don't
saying,
like it.
and I kind of agree with you, but I also think it's hard because the Villeneuve movies had such a great aesthetic and really nailed the feel of
For
Dune
sure. Yeah.
that I think it's challenging to walk away from that visual language that people now understand because
It's a marketing
without
thing,
it,
obviously. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
without it, I don't know if people watch the show, right? I think part of the
For sure. Yeah.
attraction to get people in the door is seeing more of that universe in the way that they have seen it on screen.
I understand that, and you're absolutely right from a marketing perspective, and that is certainly why they did it. But at the same time, I think it does create this sort of like negative vibe that people don't realize they're picking up on, and it's one of the reasons they're less interested in it. They're like, oh, 10,000 years in the past. You might as well have said a million or a billion years in the past, right? Numbers just cease to matter when it's that far, right? So I think it does have an effect. I agree with you that I understand exactly why they did it. I just don't like that. I think I would like to see a little bit more creativity where we just beat the thinking machines, right? So we should see a lot of architecture and style and technology that is made to work with the thinking machines, right? There should be a lot of stuff that just has holes in it or it's
Mm.
broken because they've taken it all out. We should see a world in transition. And essentially, what we get in the show is a world that looks basically the same as the movies, right? And so I think there was a big miss on creativity there, where if you're telling us this war just ended, if you're telling us it's way at the beginning of this timeline that we know ends in the Paul Atreides Muad'Dib thing, then show us that, right? And we didn't really get to see any of that. We just saw more of the Dune movie stuff. I think an opportunity missed, in my opinion,
Yeah, and
with
also
the budget that they had.
I would point out that I think a stronger way to do this series is to start with the Butlerian Jihad and actually show the conflict and then
Yeah,
show what
yeah, for sure.
happens out of the ashes of it. Because at that point in time, because they just name check, heroes of the war, and we don't have any real understanding of who they are or what they did. There's a
Mhm.
lot that's just kind of said, but the problem why this show has no emotional relevance is it's said, but it's never actually shown, because we're
Yeah.
not shown the start of the Harkonnen Atreides conflict. We're just kind of shown that it's perpetuating, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's perpetuating in a way that feels very mechanical. And one of the greatest examples of this is the scene where Tula goes and kills all the Atreides when they're on the hunt, which
Yeah.
ends up not being very poignant and actually, as you laugh, kind of funny, because she just
You're like,
goes
oh, I
there.
guess she's just a psycho killer. Okay.
Yeah,
I
she just
thought she was
goes
nice.
there, and you don't
Uh,
know that she's planning on killing everybody. Then she murders like 30 people and just walks away. And this happens in like a 5-minute span. And you're like,
mhm.
okay, well, I guess you're avenging your brother, but the setup seems really flimsy, and you even give us
An
a love
extreme
scene
response.
here, but we don't feel
Yeah.
anything because we don't really know anything about either of the characters who are in this sex scene. And then
Mhm.
even that feels very mechanical, because that moment is then used to set up the key plot point of her son's birth and then losing him. But all of that feels meaningless because the scene where it was shown has no weight, because you just introduce characters and immediately kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the it's like supposed to be a big surprise that they're Atreides or whatever, and you're just like, oh, all right, yeah, we know they don't like Atreides. I guess she's just. I mean, this seems like, kind of a strong response where it's like you killed one person, we're gonna kill like 30 of yours. It's not gonna help things too much. And then she lets the kid go. I'm like, wait, what? She killed like 30 people in cold blood. And then she just lets this one kid go. She's like, it's too much. Oh, he was a cute kid. No, he helped me skin that rabbit. That's right. I'll let him go. Like, I don't believe that for a second. She mercilessly kills all those people, including the person that she's like, kind of developed this relationship with for a long time. And she lets that kid go, and oh, that kid just happens to, grow up to be so and so, who has this kid who's so and so, who's a sword person now, and the first sword or whatever, sword master. Yeah. And it's like, oh, please. This is like, it's very pulp drama stuff at its best. It's like, this is like, if you
It
told
just
me
feels
that they
really
were vampires and it was
contrived.
a Twilight novel, I would
Yeah.
believe you,
Yeah, it just feels
It's Twilight
highly
level drama. Yeah.
contrived. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree that the reason why this show feels so hollow is that there aren't likable characters, because I would argue there aren't that many likable characters in Game of Thrones, but you're invested in the
Mhm.
characters in Game of Thrones because we spend a lot of time with these characters. We see their
Sure.
positive qualities in addition to their flaws. And even though mostly in Game of Thrones the flaws of the characters are much more severe, like they're much more dislikable than likable. Um,
Mhm.
you at least form an attachment with them, but you never really get that opportunity because either characters are doing horrible things right off the bat, like Valya Harkonnen the entire time. So it's really
Right.
hard to it's really hard to empathize with her because she's just such a monster.
Mhm.
And she is the main character of this show. By the way, Shout out to Emily Watson, who actually is a very good actor, and she portrays this character very
That's what I'm
well.
talking about. There's
The
lots of great
acting's
actors
good. That's the
portraying
thing.
characters very good. It's just their characters that they're portraying aren't very good characters. It's a very well acted show, kind of across
Yes.
the board, I think. Yeah.
No, the acting in this show is actually quite strong, I would say. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of quite strong, I love Mark Strong. And
Yeah. He's awesome.
I know
Totally agree.
when we talked about Dune 2, we obviously criticized the casting of Christopher Walken, which was terrible in Dune 2. Imagine if Mark Strong was the Emperor in Dune 2. What a banger casting that could have been.
Yeah,
would have been
or even
a
like
million times better.
I mean, you could name like any other actor, and it's like, and don't get me wrong, I think Christopher Walken is great in a lot of the things he is in. Dune is not one of them. He was miscast in that very badly. But a lot of other people.
Too Christopher Walken to be in Dune, unfortunately.
I think Anthony Hopkins could have done well in as the Emperor in Dune. He's maybe a little bit too recognizable as well, but
that's why Mark Strong would have been great.
Yeah, sure, would have been fine. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Marks, it was nice seeing Mark Addy come back as the great Uncle Harkonnen. I forget what his character's name was, but he basically was like if Bobby B had survived the boar, he'd just be angry and in a floating wheelchair towards the end of Game of Thrones. That's what we got. But Mark Addy, he does what I wrote down is that Mark Addy does bitterness better than like any other actor I've seen, where he just has a way of delivering lines that just makes him feel so bitter about everything. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that too. I feel the bitterness when I hear him talking about his lot in life and stuff. So it was great to see him come back.
After decades standing idly by while your own house claws its way out of the shit, now you choose to appear.
Perhaps we should confer.
The Sisterhood acknowledges its oversight.
You abandoned us.
Shout out Game of Thrones as well. Shout out Bobby B and the Free Folk subreddit. It's always fun to see him pop up in something, you know. We don't get enough Mark Addy. But yeah, that kind of goes along with the theme, like you're saying, like a very well acted show with very forgettable characters. I think Travis Fimmel is an actor that
he's back. Anduin Lothar is back.
I know, right? Warcraft crossover episode, right? Anduin Lothar, yeah. I mean, he was in Vikings. A lot of people know him for that. He does a great job of playing somebody who is sympathetic and yet clearly unhinged. That's his specialty.
He has crazy
eyes thing going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Definitely crazy eyes. But it's great. He does that extremely well, and I like watching him act in pretty much everything, including the Warcraft film.
I did not tell you to kill that boy, but you wanted me to. What I did for you. And I can do it again.
But if you want to hear our thoughts on that, check out that episode. It's
exactly.
in the YouTube channel.
It was very popular for some reason.
Yeah, well, because Warcraft, because it was a great film. That's why. Cinematic masterpiece. Warcraft movie. Yep. Hey, Warcraft, shout out to Warcraft for not having a subtitle, right? It was just Warcraft. Every movie has to have a subtitle, or every show, every movie. Dune Prophecy. Dune 2. Return.
Well,
I don't know.
What do you want to call it?
I don't know. Second part of Dune. Do you think we're going to get a Dune Messiah? Quick aside here.
Do I think we are? Yes, and it's going to. Yeah, I hope we do, because that's the one. I mean, first off, Denis Villeneuve says he is not going to direct that one, which is sad, because that's going to be the one that's crazy hard to direct. And I am excited to see how they would put Dune Messiah on film.
Me too. I kind of want to see it because I know it's gonna be a mess, but it might be a glorious mess. But you know, Denis Villeneuve was tasked to. He was involved with this show at the very beginning too. He was even slated to direct the first couple episodes, and then left to do more important things. But he was originally supposed to be part of it. But yeah, I wonder what happened there too, because I don't know if his involvement would have really helped all that much. I think. Again, I go back to just the material, right? I think it's just not a very gripping storyline, and the way it's presented isn't very gripping either. Here's my question for you. Do you feel like this show has the problem that has been common to a lot of the shows we've talked about, where they don't execute flashbacks well? this show also seems to suffer, to me, from misplaced flashbacks, to where if we got, just stop doing flashbacks, just do the earlier stuff earlier, just do it chronologically, because then, to your point, we could get to spend time with the characters as they develop into the characters that come later, rather than being like, and this happened, oh, but it's because of this. Isn't this so interesting?
So I thought about that, and while I would prefer that, I think the problem is that most viewers are not going to want, because you have to think about where the show would start, and it would start 20 years earlier in the sisterhood training, and we would literally just have a bunch of episodes of sisterhood training, and I think people would check out.
You and Harry Potter.
I think people would basically. I think people would just check out. So in this case, I do think that for the excitement of the show, it's better to have it structured this way, even though obviously the way the flashbacks are shown are very forced, because we don't get the Tula baby stuff until the final episode, when you would think that would be pretty important to her life and things she would be thinking about prior to that, because they're trying to make it some sort of reveal, but it's like really fucking obvious what's going to happen and also kind of lame. So yeah, I wasn't too much of a fan of that particular reveal, but I do understand why they would structure the show in the way that they did.
Yeah. I thought that moment too, that was like one of the few very emotionally impactful moments of the series, where they take her baby away that she's kind of giving up to keep from Valia, from her sister, from corrupting it, and then they give her this stillborn child to pass off as hers. Like, that's a horrible emotional moment, right? And I was like, man, if we had gotten that earlier in the series, I would have cared a lot more about this character and her relationship with her sister and all that. But yeah, they saved it for some sort of like big reveal. But we didn't care, because why do we care if what's his name, Desmond Hart, is Tula's son? Why do we care? We don't, exactly.
Because
Does
Desmond
it really
Hart
end up even mattering? Not
is
really.
crazy, and so we don't really like him.
Yeah, I mean, he killed his first episode. He kills a child. Like, I mean, like, that's the thing. We aren't really rooting for him. We're like, well, he killed that child, but he does have a sentient thinking machine eyeball virus. So maybe we can give him a pass.
We'll get to
there,
that. I do want to talk about the central plot, but before, want to shout out one of our sponsors on this episode, Nerd Legion. That, of course, is Turtle Beach. Thank you very much, Turtle Beach. These are the Stealth 700 Gen 3s. It's their latest headset. Love wearing these. As you guys have heard us say before, when you say, why are you wearing them right now? It's because we need wired headsets to hear ourselves during the podcast. This is also a Turtle Beach headset. It's called the Atlas Air. It has a wired option, but it is also wireless, and it's an open back headset. These are their latest, though. I wear these all the time when I'm not doing shows. These are my main headset that I wear these days. And they are both extremely comfortable, very high quality audio, and they have a bunch of really cool new features, including multiple wireless transmitters, which means you could plug one into your PC, one into a console, or whatever. Plug one into two different consoles that you might have. And that means all you have to do is push a button, and you will switch between the transceivers, so you don't have to like be unplugging and plugging things to use your same nice headset across multiple things. They also have simultaneous connectivity between wireless and Bluetooth, so you can listen to Nerd Legion on your couch on your phone while you play your PS5 or Xbox or Switch or whatever. And there's independent volume controls on each ear cup so that you can get the mix right in your own headphones. It's brilliant. This is a great piece of technology, plus 80 hours of battery life on this thing. You will never run out of battery.
No joke. I got those headphones, and I charged them overnight, and I have not charged them since. And I use it every day, like every single day, to watch things, to play games and all that. I have not yet had to recharge it. I am like, every day I'm like, oh, the battery's got to be dead today. It never is. It's like there's like a magic. I'm almost afraid of the battery a little bit. It might be too powerful. Is there a thinking machine in there? Do we have to execute someone?
Also,
Working
they
for
have
me
quick
right now.
they have quick charge too, so you can get them back online in 15 minutes if you do forget to charge them, and whenever they actually do run out of their immense battery life. So yeah, guys, Turtle Beach is great. They have excellent headsets, but they also bought Rockcat, so they have keyboards, mice, flight sticks, steering wheels for racing games, plus pedals and shifters. I mean, wireless controllers. It's actually crazy the amount of stuff that they have. So you guys, if you got some money for Christmas, you can head over to turtlebeach.com and use code NL. Those are the letters NL for Nerd Legion for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code NL. So thank you very much to Turtle Beach, supporting our sponsors. The best way to support us here at Nerd Legion, hands down. So thank you very much. All right, let's talk about the plot, because you mentioned the Desmond Hart plot, and this is part of the core of the show that just isn't resolved. And I think that's also why it's very hard to care about the characters, Stella, because all of a sudden at the end they're like, but Desmond Hart was being controlled by somebody else, and the virus is not his doing, and he is but a mere puppet as well.
Yeah.
And the problem with everybody being puppets and being controlled by someone else is that when they are being controlled, we cannot care about them because they're not real people.
That's right. That's the thing. It's like if they're not in control of their own actions, then they're not really doing anything, are they? They're not giving us anything to either root for or don't root for, right? It's one thing to have a character that is at some point in the story coerced or controlled by a negative force to do something that's out of character for them, then that's impactful. But if the entire time they're just being manipulated, they're like, well, this person's just an idiot then. Or, they just become uninteresting. So
Yes.
yeah, with everybody pulling everybody else's strings, it does become a bit like that sometimes.
Right. And also, we are told for this entire series, oh, there's this virus that's affecting everybody and giving them visions, and wow, and it can immolate you from the inside. Did we end the series with any information about what this is?
No, we did not. But doesn't that make you want to watch season two? No, me neither. Like, we didn't get any answers at the end of this. That's what I had to.
How did we go like? Because some of these episodes are like an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's actually like 7 hours of TV across six episodes.
No joke. I finished episode 6, and I was like, "Is there like another episode? Is this actually 8?" And I didn't know about it. And I'm like, I really thought it was 6. So I checked. I'm like, yeah, it's 6. I'm like, well, okay. I guess we just don't get a resolution. Why did they go to Arrakis at the end? Who knows? It's just so we can end the show on Dune, maybe. But we're just there. And yeah, I mean, what else is there, right? I mean, I think so. I want to talk about what maybe our thoughts are on what was the most interesting plot art in this show.
Sure.
Plot. Why is it so hard to say plot arc right now? Plock art. That's just art from the great 1990s platformer for Super Nintendo, Plock. And plot arc is something that sounds like we should save all the good plots on a big ship for when the next writer's strike happens. Anyway, but the plot arc that we're talking about here is that I think I liked the best, maybe. And it's hard to decide because I didn't really like any of them. But I think the one that probably got the most interest to me was the Emperor's arc, Carino's arc, because he seemed the most sympathetic in that he genuinely wanted to try to do a good job, but he's just so easily manipulated that you just feel sorry for him, right? At least his arc engendered some sympathy in me, for his character and what he was going through, right? Where he finds out at the end, that he never was in control of anything. He never had the willpower, the strength to be in control of anything. Just kind of a total failure of personality, right? And I feel at least there's a little bit of sympathy there.
It's a strange thing when you finally realize you've never known one true moment of freedom.
So I would say that was probably my favorite, quote unquote, plot arc. How about you?
I mean, I would agree because that ties into the political intrigue, and I think the political intrigue around his succession. And I am genuinely interested in the fact that the sisterhood, unfortunately, the conflict between Valia and Dorothea and the sisterhood is not ever really explained, and I think that's another reason why Valia's
Yeah.
betrayal of Dorothea really falls flat is that
Jealousy
she has
is
her
kind
and
of
her
the impression
followers
we get.
killed, but we don't really
Yeah.
understand what Dorothea's goals were outside of she didn't like the genetic program, but it's not explained
Right.
why. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where the show falls flat a lot of the time is you don't actually get motivation. It feels like these things are put in there with very flimsy explanations, and then you either have to like guess or infer what is actually going on. Where if we had had more time to actually explore Valia and Dorothea's conflict and the nature of the early Bene Gesserit, I think it would have been very interesting. But for me, like, I really like, obviously, because this is a core part of Dune much later as well, which is the Bene Gesserit breeding program, right? And I think that them manipulating the Imperial line to get somebody who has been trained as a Bene Gesserit onto the Imperial throne is super interesting. And the machinations they're willing to go through over many, many years to affect this is really cool. So I like that aspect of it. We're going to put, Francesca here so that she can seduce the emperor to keep him occupied until the woman they want to make empress is old enough to marry him, and it's their daughter that they're going to train and put onto the throne. Because that is the coolest shit that the Bene Gesserit do, right? Is this extremely cunning, long-term planning and manipulation of the rulers within the Dune universe. And seeing the Landsrat and seeing the conflict between the Harkonnens and the Atreides, even though I think it's done badly, is still interesting. It was also very funny, I think, to see to your criticism earlier, Doa, of there not being a lot of differences in aesthetic. Well, one big difference in aesthetic is the Harkonnen house, right? Who is hilariously these ice planet whale fur capturers, right? Like they have this very like sad job, and they haven't risen to the immense wealth and importance that they have 10,000 years later. And so seeing the start of that, I think, is really funny. Like, it's very funny that the current Baron is trying to strike trade deals for whale fur, and everybody thinks he's just like some backwater redneck with this stupid whale fur. It's funny.
There is that, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose you have a point. Things were a little bit different there. The other thing that was a little bit different now that you bring that up is the Atreides side of things. I was always under the impression that the Atreides were sort of supposed to be descended from like ancient like Greek houses, and that was sort of their lineage or whatever. But they made them, in my mind, look very like Nordic, kind of Viking almost in this, with their like dancing around the fire with mud all over their bodies, and I don't know, it seemed very like Nordic versus Greek, which I always thought the Atreides were supposed to kind of be patterned after. Maybe I got that wrong. I'm not like the biggest Dune fan, but that was always the impression I had and what I've been told by Dune fans, so I was kind of thrown by that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, look, I think that it shows the difference between the current House of Atreides too. And I do like that they subvert some of the expectations by showing the Atreides as being very noble 10,000 years later, but they're kind of just like wild, duplicitous, arrogant assholes, in this timeline of Dune.
Sure.
So,
But
I mean, as far
that could change every generation too. I mean, like you could have a noble generation, then you go to barbaric and go back and forth. It's 10,000 years. That's that's again like why like I just don't like things set that far in the past, because like who cares, right? I mean, you can't really see much development because anything can happen in the span of 10,000 years and go back and forth 100 times, right? So, yeah. Whale for one day, huge on top of the world, on top of the universe the next century, and then back to whale for the next century. Who even knows what the trajectory is?
But to your point about the Atreides, I mean, obviously the Harkonnens are extremely different as well. So I think they are trying to show how different they were back in the day. I think that's the purpose of this, right?
10,000 years ago. You know what Earth was like 10,000 years ago? I don't think you'd see a lot of stuff that reminded you of Earth now back then. Yeah. So
It'd be a lot of hunter-gatherer tribes is what it would
yeah,
be.
Earth 10,000 years from now is probably not going to look a lot like hopefully they've, I feel like Earth right now we're heading towards a Belerian jihad against social media. The social media has become the thing that thinks for us, right? So I think we're headed towards that.
I
We're
welcome
only
that.
days
I
away
will
from the
join.
TikTok
I
ban,
will
right?
join the Butlerian jihad
Me
against
too.
social media.
Thou shalt not create a platform that mimics social consciousness on a large scale, but instead subverts it.
Thou shalt not
Death to
create an
social media.
algorithm that addicts you.
By the way, like and subscribe to our channel here. I felt like that was a good time to mention that. Like, subscribe, please. Ring the bell. There's a bell on YouTube, I guess. I've never even seen that bell.
And
I think I have all that
also
stuff turned off.
support our sponsors, obviously.
Oh yeah. Well, right, but they're by buying their products though.
Yeah, we're helping you.
Media, right?
We're
Buy
helping
real
you.
things. Yeah.
We're helping you.
Be a thinking human. Take agency for yourself again.
And
By doing
a
what we
way
tell
you can help you and us at the same time is to support our sponsor Mando, who of course offers men's grooming products that I've been really enjoying. So soaps, body washes, whole body deodorant wipes. These are all things you can give a try out with Mando. I've been really enjoying. They have a bunch of masculine scents, bourbon leather. I've been enjoying the Clover Woods scent. That's been my new jam. I think that one's my favorite. But you guys, of course, can give it just a shot with the starter pack and get a few of their products, try it out. If it's for you, go ahead and get more. But it's a really easy way to give everything a try. And the deodorant is not going to be an antiperspirant, so it doesn't clog up your pores. It doesn't have aluminum or any of that stuff that I don't tend to like in there. It instead uses mandelic acid to stop the production of body odor before it starts. It's also created by a doctor. So somebody who actually understands the science behind body odor. So that can be very helpful as well. She created Lumi as well. If you guys know the women's deodorant, and Mando is the extension for men of that original brand. All products are baking soda free, paraben free. And you guys can try it out with a starter pack, which is perfect for new customers. Comes with a solid stick deodorant. That's your deodorant you probably know and use already. Cream tube deodorant. And this is the cream tube deodorant is actually one I use now, which is more like a lotion that you can rub anywhere. So not only into your armpits, but very easy if you get body odor other places. And 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes. Deodorant wipes actually are extremely helpful. When I start to smell, it removes it immediately. So if you're not in a place where you can easily take a shower, camping, out and about, these are great just to have the little packet in your backpack or wherever with you. And free shipping. You get free shipping as well. As a special for our listeners to Nerd Legion, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That code is NERD. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code NERD at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Support our show. Please tell them we sent you. Really does help us. And hopefully you enjoy the products as much as we have.
Yeah. Have a Belerian jihad against body odor.
That's right.
Eliminate it completely for all time.
It's a great tagline. I don't know why they don't use it.
I think they should use that. Yeah, that's right.
Nothing bad could ever happen with the tag, the jihad against body odor.
You're right. I mean, Dune has all fear is the mind killer thing. You could have, odor is the date killer. There you go. The vibe killer.
The vibe killer. I like that.
Yeah, odor is a vibe killer. Yeah, there you go. Take inspiration from Dune. The jihad against body. Well, anyway,
are you sweaty because you're on Arrakis? Freshen up your still suit. Use a deodorant wipe while you're out chilling with your Freeman buds.
Hey, here's why it's super important, right? To not have an antiperspirant on Arrakis, because you need to collect that sweat in your still suit to turn into drinkable water.
Point.
So you really want to use Mando at that point, right? Because you want it to be fresher than ever, right? Your drinking water from your still suit will be so fresh, so clean if you use Mando while you're on Arrakis.
Scientifically designed for the Fremen. We can say that, right?
That's right. Yeah. From the Suk school of body odor elimination. Right. Exactly. So, speaking of fear is the mind killer, did you get the real subtle reference where fear was causing their minds to be killed by the little machines in their minds?
Did you
causing
get
fear?
the implication
Get it?
that
Get it?
the Gom Jabbar test is really just the virus that immolates you? That's
Could
been killing
be.
everybody?
He was getting pretty warm when they did that in the first movie.
Noah, this is
don't
one
you
of those
hate it?
times
This is-
where they over-explain things in a fantasy or
Yeah.
sci-fi universe and make it lame. Like,
This
I
is the
didn't need to know.
midi-chlorians of the Dune universe.
Yes, this is truly, this is the midi-chlorians of the Dune universe, where we didn't need to know that about the Force. We didn't need to know in Firefly that the Reavers were caused by a virus instead of just being people who are crazy in space. It ruined the mystique. And having this just be a virus, I didn't need to know what was in the box on the Gom Jabbar test, right? That the mystery of it was what was so fucking cool. And now it's probably going to turn out that it was just this virus. They just put the virus in the box,
Yeah.
and then like use their brains like this to like superheat somebody. Not kill them, obviously, but put them in great discomfort. And that's going to be the result of it. And it's like, we don't need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. When that was happening, I was like, oh, fear is the mind killer. I get it. Yeah. Way to take a cool line from the original books and just make it uncool. It's a midi-chlorian moment. It's Dune's midi-chlorian moment. That's how it is. For those of you who aren't aware, what I'm talking about is way back, and everyone knows this, but I'm just going to explain anyway, just in case. Way back in the year 1999, when Star Wars: The Phantom Menace came out, it was revealed and then rejected by the Star Wars community at large that the Force wasn't some mystical thing. It was just little things called midi-chlorians in your blood that, if you had a lot of them, you could do special things.
It was the power level of the Force that they could measure.
Yeah, right. So that's lame. And largely that has been forgotten about in Star Wars. That I don't think it's ever really been mentioned again. I think maybe once in the Disney Star Wars shows they mentioned midi-chlorians. But certainly no one should mention it. It's much more cool to just be this mystical thing. Just like, the fear is a mind killer, all that kind of stuff is just cooler when it's just mystical, right? We don't need to have an explanation because mystery is intrigue, right? Not everything needs to be explained.
What was cool about the Jedi was that they were Eastern philosophy and Buddhism that was like Buddhist mysticism that was fused into a sci-fi universe and gave these people extraordinary powers. We don't need an explanation more than that. It's like some people have the power, some people don't. We don't need to know why. That's part of the fun of it. And in the same way here, what was cool about the Bene Gesserit is that they're very secretive, conniving, magical space witches. And I don't need to know more than that about them.
Yeah. Yeah, they have. I mean, we already kind of knew it was like extreme psychic, not powers necessarily, but abilities, essentially super sensing kind of stuff, augmented by spice, right? That they were able to do all these kind of mystical looking things, and that's fine. Just leave it at that. But and it's like, Dune is yet another take on the whole court wizard thing, right? Where the machinations of the group of wizards behind the scenes, behind the shoulders of the kings and queens and nobles, we see it all the time, right? You see it in the Wheel of Time, you see it in The Witcher, you see it in a lot of different things. But Dune, I felt like, did it in an interesting way. They did it on a galactic scale where you're trying to not just control the decisions of the leaders, but control who the leaders are over hundreds and thousands of years. That was very neat. And so, a show that looks at the origin of that isn't that bad. But I don't even think we really get the origin, really. We kind of get like we join them already in progress, like a couple generations into the origin of the Bene Gesserit, right? They're not even called that. They're just called the Sisterhood in this show, right? But I still feel like if you're gonna go that far back, go farther back. Go back to the real start, right? But we didn't get that. So plot wise, I mean, here's the thing: is we were talking about the plot earlier, but we started to kind of get all over the place, and part of that, the reason for that is because the plot is just all over the place, right? There's a lot of different things happening, and not really much of it comes to a satisfying conclusion, right? You have the Atreides guy who wants to overthrow the government. He's working with the Fremen person. Oh, Atreides and Fremen working together. That's familiar, isn't it? Doesn't that make you like this? Oh, Harkonnens and Atreides not liking each other. Isn't that familiar? Doesn't that make you like this? It's more of that, right? But so we've got the Atreides thing going on. We've got the Emperor plot going on. We've got the Queen plot going on, where she's kind of, is she going to take over? Is she not going to take over? We've got the Princess plot going on, where she wants to be involved with various people. We've got everyone's got their own little plots, and we don't really get any of them to be fairly well developed. And weirdly, they don't tend to interact with each other all that much either. That was the thing that really threw me, is that a lot of the plots didn't really intersect too often, which you'd think you would want them to do at some point. You get a little bit at the end, but not really. Everyone's still kind of doing their own thing,
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is just because the nature of the Dune universe is that when people are on different planets, it's very hard for them to communicate with each other and to travel those
Sure.
great distances, because that's the core part of the Dune universe. The core part is that without the computers, they have to use the spice, and that's expensive and rare. So the space travel has to be very well planned and very deliberate in order to occur. And so I think that's part of the problem that they run into, is it's hard to have characters kind of like going back and forth.
Did you notice another thing? Speaking of planets, is towards the start of the show, we got like a lot of, we're on this planet. When they arrived on a planet, the name of the planet would pop up. And then kind of halfway through the show, they sort of just gave up and they kind of stopped doing it. And we were even going to planets we'd never been before, and they didn't show the title of the planet.
I didn't know that.
You're
Yeah,
like,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, if you go back and watch, I noticed that, where I'm like, where are we now? Like, I kind of feel like if you're going to be jumping planet to planet a lot, you do need to, be good about letting people know what the planet is. And I love that establishing shot of like a ship arriving to the, flying towards the planet. You see the name of the planet, or like an establishing shot of like a city or a cool landscape and the name of the planet. I love that kind of stuff. So I do notice that, and I don't have any other explanation for it other than they just kind of got lazy with it. Because if it was one thing where we were going to the same planets over and over again, it was very obvious where we were, then I could see a reason for stopping it. But where we were going to planets we'd never been before, and where we were going to planets in a way that they looked totally different, I think we still kind of needed that grounding too, and they just kind of stopped doing it. So I was intrigued by that decision. I wasn't super confused, but I was like, well, why do it and then kind of stop doing it then,
I'm glad you bring up the planets, because I mean, the show is beautiful. This is what's so frustrating about this show, is that it feels hard to criticize, because when you think about it, you're like, you think to yourself, wow, Dune Prophecy, it looks amazing. The sets, the costumes are absolutely gorgeous. The cinematography looks really good. As we mentioned before, the acting is all really on points across the board. The performers really kill it. And you think about it and you think, wow, the concept of this is actually very interesting as well. This could be a great political intrigue. But he just has no soul. There's no soul in this thing at all. It just feels so contrived and mechanical as you go through it. It doesn't even feel like the characters are doing things. It feels like the writers are writing things to like knock a domino down so that all the rest of the dominoes fall. It doesn't feel real.
And I think, again, it comes down to the way in which the information is given to us. I think the order in which scenes are shown to us, that's really it. I think honestly, you could take this show and you could rearrange the scenes in a way to make it better. You could rearrange the scenes in a way to make things happen in a more gripping way, where you have that setup that you lacked, right? Because they decided to do the flashback later is the big reason for a lot of it. again, there's this obsession with flashbacks lately, and so few shows tend to do it well. And this show is another one of those ones where, a lot of things that were flashbacks to try to make you go, oh, that's why that is more. It would have been better if it just would have happened earlier, even earlier in the same episode, so that when something happens later, you connect emotionally more with the character and you get why they're doing what they're doing more, and has more of an impact. Either you're cheering for them for succeeding in something that's been now a long time coming, or you're horrified by their actions because of the trust that was placed in them that's now betrayed or something like that, right? It's almost like people forgot you have to have a beginning, middle, and end of a story. It really is a plague in television right now.
I will give you a really good example. My favorite example of this from the show, Doa, which is just like, it's supposed to be moving, but it just ends up being like funny because of how fast something happens and how mechanical it feels. So remember, we're in that scene. This is a flashback when Valya and Tula are younger in the Harkonnen household, and they're talking to their brother Griffin, and of course he's going to go off and be the man and get some business done on behalf of their family. And Valya says, well, why don't you take some revenge on those Atreides while you're out there? And he's like, okay. And then like literally the next scene is just his corpse.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Did you skip a scene here?
Do we get to see him attempting to take any, because at that point, Doa, I'm thinking to myself, oh, we're going to get some really cool scenes where we get to flesh out the relationship between the Atreides and the Harkonnen. We're going to get to meet more of these Atreides characters and see exactly what they're up to. We're going to get a sense of Griffin and who he is as a person, because bear in mind, we don't know anything about Griffin, basically, when that scene starts. And we never learn anything about Griffin, but we're supposed to feel bad about his death somehow. It's very weird.
We just know everybody loved Griffin. Like,
yeah,
exactly. That's the thing. It's like, oh, Griffin was so great. Like, I guess I'll take your word for it. Like, let me introduce you to a concept called cut for time. Because I feel like that's what happened to a lot of Griffin scenes. I feel like that struck me, that transition was so jarring. It struck me as they must have shot something, or they must have written something, and then it just never got made, or
it's
just
so funny,
fell to the cutting room floor, as it were, But all that scene was missing was just like the slide whistle going, boop, when it's just like,
I'm sure our editor will put it in here. And keep in mind, he did not edit the part that you're about to see, which is just them being like, goodbye, Griffin, and then it's just him like,
I'm telling you, it needed a comedy slide whistle sound effect.
Put that in, Adanion, put it in.
That's why if you think the best course of action is to track down Vorian Atreides and get him to take back his lies, I will.
Yeah, or Ron Howard going, and he didn't, and then he's dead. Do a little Arrested Development thing there.
But then Doa, what they try and do is the show tries to emotionally manipulate you that we should feel bad about Griffin dying, or Griffin was the future of the house and everybody loved Griffin, because that actually is a major point that her uncle brings up in the contemporary time period. But because nobody gives a shit about Griffin, because we knew nothing about him and he just died instantly, like the effect of it, Doa, at least for me, is that I just assumed Griffin was kind of an idiot. So who cares that he died? He just went off and got himself killed.
It was like, oh yeah, I should mess with those Atreides because Valya said so, and they died. But Griffin was so cool that they had a big painting of him on the wall, like in the modern times, and all that. It's just like, hey, sick Griffin painting. Did he autograph that before he died? It's like,
this is what Dune Prophecy does, guys. Is it's in such a hurry to get to the next political machination plot point that it just does shit like this that ends up being comical instead of impactful. And they you never learn anything about any of the characters or why there's no emotional impact because of the way the story is structured.
Yeah. So, another kind of jarring thing too is like the one sister that can shape change. I don't know how you pronounce that thing. She's like a Telexala,
Theodosia. Oh, you mean the
right?
thing that
Not
she
not a
is?
character name. Yeah, the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that she is, like the
I don't know.
Telexu breeding pro. I don't know, whatever. She can change shapes. So they have her. She's gonna originally pretend to be the princess and buy time, which seems like a good idea, but no, she decides to turn into a dead guy so that she can stab Travis Fimmel, right? But then so she does that, and she's like, sisterhood above all. By the way, the power of one, the power of two, the power of sisterhood above all. Back to reality though. So she stabs Travis Fimmel and she goes, sisterhood above all, and then she appears to die, and I'm like, wait a minute, she was fine. Like, did she ever sustain any injuries or anything like that? I don't know what happened there, but and then he survives that vicious stab wound just fine for the rest of the show.
And in
Yes.
fact, doesn't appear to be hurt by it at all by the end of the show.
No.
And in fact, his own mother is not concerned with the giant stab wound he has in his abdomen.
That was a bit of a stretch too. It's like, okay, well, now we're just getting into the MCU stuff where it's like, oh, I've been stabbed, but I'll make it. I'll be okay.
Oh, it's
At
okay.
least
Mom's
he
here.
has-
I need this emotional moment where we hug, and then I tell them to arrest her. And he's just standing there. He's like, remember how I was stabbed previously? Ha ha.
And what's the deal with and then his ninjas on command appear. He's got an army. Travis Fimmel has an army of ninjas, by the way. Desmond Hart, aka Travis Fimmel, has an army of ninjas, and a bunch of them get beaten.
Yep.
And then they just aren't in any of the scenes where we require a solo one-on-one emotional moment. And then he's like, arrest her, and then they're suddenly there. It's like, hey guys.
Not only that,
we
but that's
could've used your
supposed to
help
be
a few minutes ago.
That's supposed to be the start of the Sardaukar, right?
I was
That they
wondering about that,
introduce
yeah.
in this show,
Yeah.
which is like, Mark Strong is the Emperor, Corino. He
Right,
says,
right.
"Oh, I've got my special soldiers now." So the implication is that's the start of the Sardaukar. But the Sardaukar, which are supposed to be the most terrifying troops in the universe, are basically like stormtroopers from Star Wars in this, where it takes one like wayfish princess to stab 3 of them, and they can't do anything about it. And then they're never there, like you say. They're literally there just to get like 1v3'd at all possible times. So it really takes the teeth out of the Sardaukar.
They were just starting out. They didn't do too well in the first iteration. But this is what I describe as the putty problem. And what I'm referring to is the putties from Power Rangers, who only existed to just be beaten up by the Power Rangers for a little bit each episode. Oh, Rita Repulsa is going to invade the Earth first, send some putties to get beat up by the Power Rangers. This is the putty problem, where you have a legion of same-looking thugs to get beat up by the heroes for the purpose of showing us that the heroes are cool and capable. Maybe it'd be more impactful for them to be doing actual interactions with other characters, maybe getting a fight with another character we're invested in. But no, we got the putties, right? We got to throw the faceless chaff, the stormtroopers, or whatever you want to call it, the million Ultrons at the heroes just to show them beaten up and be like, whoa, they're so cool and capable. And I hate it. I hate it every time it happens because it is just filler. That is the overly thick hot dog bun of science fiction films and television. You don't need it. You'd be fine if it was half as thick, but it's like, well, the hot dog's inside, so I guess I got to eat this stupid thing. That's it. It's a too big hot dog bun. It's the putties from Power Rangers. It is just filler at the end of the day. And so I was disappointed that they had the Sardaukar, but they sucked. They're like the Sucktakur kind of. And they were just putties. They were just putties in this show, man. Yeah. It was such a waste. It was sad. I guess they weren't very good to start. Everyone has to start somewhere, I guess.
So I'm very conflicted about this show, Doa. What would you rate this show?
Oh man, because I mean we've been very negative on it throughout this episode because, and I think the negativity comes from the frustration we feel by knowing that it was so close to being good. Because I think that's really what it comes down to, is that the shows that upset us the most are not the shows that are just obviously bad. Those are just funny, like The Acolyte. The shows I have to like diss The Acolyte in every episode. It's contractually obligated. But yeah, the shows that bug me the most, and I think you feel this too, are the shows that were so close to being good, but just fumble it, right? And this show definitely falls into that camp where, I would rate it out of 10, I would rate it maybe like a 6.5, right? Something like that, where it's maybe even a 7, because I love the visuals, I love the acting. Oh yeah, it's 6.5, whatever. My point is, it's just above middling is where I'm placing.
I agree
this,
with you
right?
on that.
Where it's where it's the visuals are great, the acting is great. I like the idea of the show, but the execution is just so disjointed and so bland that you get this thing where it's like, man, I really want to like this. I know it could have been better, but the writing just was not there. And that is this season. Maybe season 2 could be better. I think this is a show where you could have a season 2 that if they tighten things up a little bit, they get some different writers on there. You could maybe do something really cool, right? But I think if they stick with the same group they've got now, we're going to get something, again, very middling. It's not bad. It's not good. It's Dune Prophecy. There's your
Yeah,
model.
I agree. I would say this for me, this was like a 5.5. We mentioned it, but the acting is really very good.
Yeah.
There are some, solid scenes. There are some solid scenes in here. Emily Watson is really amazing as the older version of Valia Harkonnen. That's a hard role to play. And to have people not hate her instantly. And I think what's interesting about her character is you can understand her drive and motivation, even if you don't agree with the ends justifying the means in the way that she does, right? She is selfless in many ways. She is selfish in her desire for power, but once she has power, she is dedicated to a mission that is bigger than herself. So I think she's a very interesting character, and I think Emily Watson really slays the role. Like you said, it's beautiful to look at. Just as a show that you're going to go there and appreciate the set pieces and appreciate the costumes, it can be, and the cinematography, it can be very good. The problem is like you say, it's frustrating because it has all the trappings of something that's good, including many good plot ideas, honestly. But the advancement of the plot comes at the price of everything emotional weight in the show. So you never actually feel anything while watching the show. And it's kind of a weird experience. If you guys want to have this experience, go ahead and watch it. You'll be like, it is very strange that I feel nothing while watching this. It's almost impressive. It's almost impressive.
The only thing I felt while watching it was kind of a mild feeling of discomfort because I didn't care about the characters. I just was not interested, I found myself looking away, and like usually when I watch something for this show, I really focus on it, because I'm taking notes, I'm invested in it. This show, above a lot of other ones, I found my attention straying pretty often. I would like look at my phone where I wouldn't normally do that. I'd look at another tab. It felt very second screen, which is too bad. I wish it wouldn't. We didn't even get into any of the stuff with like the younger acolytes and all that kind of stuff. The younger sisterhood members, right? Sister Lila and all that. I didn't know your ancestors will speak to you. Was that literal? That they just kind of take your body over? Real nice.
Only in this specific case, right? Because she was kept alive after failing the agony.
Yeah, maybe. But either way, none of those characters were really that.
I mean, to be fair, in the original Dune novels, Paul's sister is actually controlled by Baron Harkonnen, who's one of her ancestors at one point in time. That's a pretty big plot point. So you definitely can be possessed. That's happened. That's happened in Frank Herbert's
I've
novels.
only read like the first 2.5 Dune books. I never finished Children of Dune.
Oh.
See, I told you I wasn't a big Dune fan. I don't know. But I've heard from big Dune fans that they don't like this show. And I try. I take
it's just not very interesting, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's really it. I mean, it's like I said, get ready for an hour of kind of tepid takes, and I feel like it's a tepid conclusion too, where it's like, should you watch Dune Prophecy? If you really love Dune, sure, it's well acted. You've got a lot of fun actors in there. But do you really need to watch Dune Prophecy? Nah, there's probably a lot of other better stuff to watch right now. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't criticize anyone for watching Dune Prophecy. I wouldn't be like, you're wasting your time. But I would be like, you sure?
I'm just because if you just described this show and you were saying this is a show set in the early Dune universe and it's entirely about feudal politics. You know who's all in on that shit? Me. I'm the target audience, and even I find this boring. So I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that's a very bad sign because I'm the one who's saying I like House of the Dragon more than Game of Thrones because it's just all feudal politics, right?
Sure.
And other people are like, I need a sea battle at the end of the season where I am not satisfied. I'm like, fuck you, it's coming. Enjoy the political intrigue. But it's just much better done in House of the Dragon.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of brings us back to yet another HBO style HBO show, right? Where it's like everything on HBO has to do this, right? It has to be like Succession drama. Here's your surprising violence scene. Oh my goodness, I can't believe they killed all those people. Here's your sex scene. Oh my goodness, that person's not wearing clothes.
Here's your sex scene with people you probably didn't want to see naked, actually.
Sure, or you just don't care about, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, characters you just don't care too much about. So it felt very
Arya
like
Stark sex scene, never forget.
Oh, geez, I had until you mentioned that. Thanks a lot. Ugh. Anyway, this felt wrong. I don't know. Anyway, I digress.
So bad.
Felt so wrong. Going back to Dune. Speaking of things that feel wrong, that whole show, it just felt like very cookie cutter. If you asked AI to write an HBO style show, this is what it would write. It's like, make an HBO style show in the Dune universe. This is what it would give you, and I think that's just it. At the end of the day, it's just very, very bland, right? Story wise, and you need a good story.
All right, guys. So next week, we are going to return to Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I know many of you may not be interested in that show, but it is actually really good. Shockingly.
You should be. Skeleton Crew is fantastic. I love that show. I will say it right now. Preview. Best Star Wars stuff to come out since Andor.
I mean, that's not that hard to accomplish.
It's a low bar, but it cleared it by a lot. Great show. I enjoyed it throughout.
Also, we'll probably intersperse this with a return to our 1980s fantasy marathon, but there is some interesting stuff coming up. I know both you and I, Doe, are excited about Severance Season 2, which is coming out on Apple TV Plus finally, starting on January 17th. So that's actually, this episode will be out by the time that starts. I will say, Doe, we're going to probably leave that. We'll do a few episodes in because it's coming out weekly on Fridays. So probably wait till like 3 episodes in and we'll talk about season 1 and season 2 at the same time. If you guys haven't seen Severance, it came out 3 years ago. So, it kind of unfortunately was really good. And then people forgot about it because the writer's strike really delayed the second season. So it's been a long time. It is a very good show. It is a very good show. Yeah, it's really good. So that's a show you guys should probably catch up on. We will be doing that. And also, Doa, good news. On February 11th on Netflix, the second anime Witcher movie is coming out, The Witcher: Sirens of the Deep.
Oh, all right. Sure. You're a big Witcher fan. I never got into it. I've tried to read the first Witcher book.
I've never read the books, to be fair.
Tried to play a couple of the Witcher video games. Didn't get into them. So I don't know. I think it's like a neat universe. We watched the show, the most recent season of the show, the last Henry Cavill season, sadly. And I'm sure we're gonna watch the next season. The show was funny. There were twins that put their swords together and tried to fight with him. It was very awkward and hilarious. You're a much bigger Witcher fan than me, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not going into that one with a lot of anticipation, but we'll watch it.
I did not see the first anime movie, but it is actually supposed to be very good. So I will watch the first anime movie and then watch the second one, Sirens of the Deep. Interestingly, they're getting the voice actor from the video. They got the voice actor from the video games to play Geralt in this because Henry Cavill had already moved on, right?
Yeah.
But he's great in the games. His name is Doug Cockle. So yeah, we'll be looking at that. So stay tuned, guys. Next week, more Star Wars Skeleton Crew. See you then.
Oh, yes.